How many times have you sat through a presentation and didn't remember a single thing just 30 minutes after the presentation was over? I'm going to give you the most effective ways to create a presentation that wows audiences and tips on how you can make it even more valuable. So let's get into it. It's so easy to overthink a presentation and want to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at your presentation. But more often than not, simpler is actually better. If you look at some of the most historically significant presentations in business, you'll notice that they don't have too much on the screen. Take former Apple CEO Steve Jobs, for example. When he would unveil a new product, you would often see just plain text over a black background, or just the product itself. This is because it keeps the audience's attention on what's important: the text, the product, and ultimately you, the presenter. So how can you apply this to your own presentations? Use minimalism and consistency. Some simple rules to follow are: keep text to what is absolutely necessary. We're not writing an essay or trying to be super linguistic here. Stick to the highlights of your key points in a way that your audience can easily understand and not spend more time reading when they should be listening and understanding. Try using only one large image per slide. This can change with smaller images, and it's also dependent on the flow of the rest of your slide, which we'll discuss later in this video. Like the text example, the image should help illustrate your point and have the audience drawn to it, not overwhelmed because you wanted 6 giraffes on your slide. But what about consistency? You want your whole presentation to be consistent in multiple ways, including topic, color, and font. Make sure each slide relates back to your topic and adds to the overall point that you're trying to make. From a design perspective, color and font are extremely important. I can't emphasize that enough. You want your presentation to follow a basic color theme and palette that carries onto every slide. Same goes for your fonts. Simple rule of thumb is to use only 2 to 3 fonts max, and they'll fall in line with the rest of the theme of the presentation. So using serif font probably doesn't make too much sense if we're doing a presentation on race cars, for example. Now, that isn't to say that we need to make our presentation boring. It still needs to hook your audience. This is where we can get really creative. Everybody loves motion. Humans love to be visually stimulated all the time. This is one of the reasons that TikTok videos have blown up in the last few years, because people are willing to learn calculus if there's a hydraulic press video or a slime video playing underneath it. And thank you for watching, by the way. You can add video and animations to your presentations to not only retain your audience's attention, but also make your points easier to understand. Not saying that you should have a slime video in your presentation. But you can even stylize your videos and have them play in unique shapes to further illustrate your ideas, like using a phone overlay to play one of those TikTok videos I mentioned earlier. So play around with the use of your video and don't let that become your presentation. Use them sparingly so that they become even more effective, but they can retain your audience. And then comes animations. Even with a minimalistic approach to your presentation, you can use simple animations to make your graphics pop and easily emphasize your next point. And they just look cool. But all of this can be for nothing if we don't construct these elements to be aesthetic or pleasing to the human eye. This is where we need to discuss the elements of an appealing design. It's important to understand the visual hierarchy for your presentation. There are some basic aspects to this, but there are more nuanced details which you could have overlooked when designing in the past. For starters, size matters. The bigger a subject is, the more noticeable it is. So you use large graphics sparingly and only when they help illustrate a point. Don't be afraid to use a slide that just has one word or one picture on it, because it can prime the audience to be in the right frame of mind for upcoming slides. Then there's contrast. Just like in your color theme, colors are important, and you want to make sure that you coordinate the layer in your subjects, text, and colors properly so they can stand out and be easily understood. And this may sound a little strange, but the space that you don't use can be just as important as the space that you do use. It's important to space out your text, graphics, and the pictures in a way that is emphasized, and this means leaving areas of the frame empty so that the right emphasis is placed on the right part of the slide. Which then takes us into the alignment of your slide. You'll want to guide the reader's eye in a natural F pattern, starting from the top left and moving across and down. Misaligned elements can disrupt the flow and actually make information harder to follow. And to further understand use of space, we have the rule of thirds, which will sound familiar to any photographers out there. This rule divides the image into a 3x3 grid and positions key elements along the grid lines or intersections. This principle creates a balanced and engaging layout. But beyond designing a cool presentation, what else is there? being human. You can make your presentation be as aesthetic as possible, but at the end of the day, you are making it for a specific audience. So in a weird way, not in a weird way, it needs to be relatable. In a world with AI being all that people talk about and content creation being taken over by machines, the human element can make all the difference in your presentation, being truly memorable. So use a personal story to start off your presentation. We see this tactic used in some of the most viral TED Talks. It's because it gets the audience emotionally invested in you and your presentation. This is a far greater connection that allows you to become closer with your audience. And this could be as simple as a slide with an old family photo or an accomplishment that you achieved and can benefit your audience and they could try to replicate. But that can only get you so far if you're not playing to the right people. This is where you need to do your prep work ahead of time and know your audience so that you don't alienate them. Again, relate to them. You want it to be as relatable as possible for their potential struggles or their potential pain points. But just as much as pulling at the heartstrings, levity can also engage your audience. So come up with a joke or weave in subtle bits of humor throughout your presentation as it relates back to the main topic. And there, your presentation is done. You feel confident about it and you're ready to present it to the world. But how do you get the most ROI out of it rather than just a one-off presentation? Simple. You should record it as a video and begin using the dozens of distribution channels at your disposal. You can publish it in full to sites like YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. You can even use the audio recording and publish it as a podcast, which you can then share on social media channels. Just make sure that you have a link to your slides so that listeners can actually follow along as you go. And you can even publish it as a webinar and use it as a lead magnet for your product or for your service. And finally, clip out the best bits of your presentation and share it to short form video sites like Instagram Reels, TikTok, or YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts is actually really cool because then you can link it back to your full presentation on YouTube and get even more views. So use these tips to not only build an exceptional presentation, but also get more people to watch it and create value for you and your audience. And if you need help designing for your next presentation, try Visme, our all-in-one design platform that we created specifically for people like you to make professional grade presentations easy. I'm Yvonne from Visme, helping you design better for your business.